When I think of home, it's a place of birth. For me, it's special because I was born in Israel. It's also, I feel like when you think of home, I feel like it's something that protects you, that engulfs you, that hugs you. And I've been living in this country for 36 years, but still, whenever I go home, I have these things in my stomach that I'm home. I'm back where I belong. There's something that will never leave you.
Home for me is being with my husband Bill and my son Harry. And wherever they are and we are together, that's home. Otherwise, on a geographical note, I think of New York as my home. I am a New Yorker through and through.
When I think of home, I think of a place that is safe, where I feel connected to the people that I'm with.
When I think of home, I don't really think of a house or a roof over my head, but I do think of a community. I think of my family. I think of the various places I lived and the communities that I built and I brought with me. And so home for me is something that I kind of transport from place to place, and it stays with me wherever I am.
Well, I've been living in Israel as a former South African for 40 years. Israel is my home. I feel very much at home here. I am part of a majority. In South Africa, I was a minority as a Jew and a minority as a white. Here, I am involved. I work with the Joint in many projects, and I feel very involved with my people. I'm at home.
Israel is a special place for me because I grew up in Israel. I was in the army. I actually served 4 years because I wanted to give something back to my country. And that's what when I think of home, whenever I travel back to Israel and the plane lands in Ben Gurion Airport, I know I arrived home. I arrived to a safe place. I arrived to a place I love, a place that will love me unconditionally.
My husband's history in the Jewish religion and my son's now history with the Jewish religion makes Israel always a home for them and for all Jews around the world. And so in that sense, Israel is home.
I feel that Israel is home to all Jewish people and to many other people as well. But primarily, Israel is the Jewish homeland. And for me, having grown up always when the State of Israel was in existence, that was a great sense of security. Having learned about our history and our past when Jews often didn't have a place that was safe or that they could call home. And Israel is that for the Jewish people and for me in some sense.
Well, I think Israel is a very complicated, very complex place, and my interest in exploring the concept of home in Israel was really being able to visit with a number of different communities and constituencies and seeing who actually did live there. And I've been to Israel many times, and I was most interested in seeing smaller communities that maybe receive much less attention. So it could be the Druze, it could be the Bedouins, it could be the Sudanese, who have kind of now taken over part of Tel Aviv. And for such a small kind of sliver of land, it's amazing how many people actually do live side by side and are able to maintain their own heritage and their own narrative and their own traditions.
So overall, it was an incredible experience. Now, I've been to Israel many, many times. I can't even count. But when you see Israel from the country you love, from a perspective of somebody who has never been there, and there were some people in the group that were never been, and it was like a wow moment for them. And for me, when I visit, or even when I travel, I don't get to see all of the populations like the Arab populations. You don't go to visit them so often. So it opened my eyes. And to go to a Bedouin village and to see how they live, and they play the kids play in the dirt, and they really don't have school, you start thinking about what's happening in the country. Or when you go to Bnei Brak and you look at the religious communities, and you realize that they're happy, but they need help because they can't study, they can't live from studying all the time. So also we went up to the north and we visited Druze, and a school, at a children's school, and the project that they did was unbelievable. So I think this trip opened my eyes to all these vulnerable populations within Israel.
So one of my favorite stories and experiences on the trip, there were many, but Dahlia really touched me on the heartstrings when she told her story. She's severely handicapped. She was born prematurely, and we visited her in her new apartment that was provided by the JDC, with the help of the JDC, for independent living, and it was set up for all of her handicap needs. She's literally in a wheelchair at all times. She can't function outside a wheelchair. And she told the story that she was born 3 times. The first time when she was born prematurely, and she said they got her body, but they didn't get her brain. The second time was when she was removed from an abusive family and institutionalized, and that was with the help of JDC. And the third time, with the help of JDC, she was able to find a home to live on her own. She did also meet her husband through JDC when she was speaking to a broad group about her various experience. He was drawn to her, so she had a marriage happen through JDC, and that was the third time she was born. This is just a small example of the things that we learned about that the JDC can do for individuals, and the more independent individuals become, the less dependent they are on government, is the better for all people. And they touch lives, and they make a difference, and they do that one person at a time, multiple times around the world. So it's pretty remarkable.
This was an amazing trip. I've been to Israel many times since I was a little girl traveling with my parents, and many times throughout my life. But in this trip, we had the opportunity to go into places that were not really open to the average tourist. So many experiences that were special. In particular, I'm thinking about the Bedouin village, where we really went into the homes of people who we would never have interacted with, and had a very intimate experience there. It was actually all of the home visits, the visit to the old age home, visiting senior citizens and seeing where they spent all of their time, and also the home of a young couple who both have cerebral palsy and would not otherwise have been able to live independently, but because of JDC had a home of their own in Israel. That was a remarkable experience for me.
I was most excited and interested in meeting a group that called themselves the African Israelites. And it's a group that I had heard about for a long time and had never been able to gain access to when I visited Israel. And they started in Chicago, and they have claimed that they are in some ways part of a lost tribe, and that Israel is really their home. And they have followed this very strange, circuitous route through the Middle East back to Israel, where they have built a community and actually have fought for many, many years to gain privileges and acceptance by the Israeli government. And I understand that they just recently did. But they're a very secretive group, and they're not open really to allowing outsiders to come in. The fact that we were able to gain access to them was really something very special.
The trip of the Americans to Israel, somewhat parallel to the J docu, I was excited. I was excited to see foreigners using the camera, looking at what they were photographing, understanding, seeing the expressions on the faces of youngsters, Arab children, Arabs at kindergarten, people in need, people at underprivileged, people in need of care. It was so different to see Americans looking through the camera and focusing on the expression of the subject, rather than standing and listening to a guide give a lecture.